Did you know that most drivers are destroying their car's suspension without even realizing it? I've witnessed $1,300 control arm failures and $3,600 repair bills just because of basic mistakes. Today, I'll reveal 10 secrets even your mechanic probably won't tell you. Apply these tips right away, and you could easily save thousands, plus years of hassle. Ready? Let's dive into the real reasons suspensions fail and how you can keep yours running practically forever. Secret number 10. Protect your rubber seals before they destroy your wallet. Here's something most people never think about until it's too late. Your suspension has dozens of rubber seals and bushings that are constantly under attack from heat, cold, and road chemicals. When these fail, you're looking at repair bills that'll make your head spin. A typical control arm replacement runs $1,300 for a basic car, and if you're driving something luxury, you can double that. Here's what the pros know that you don't. There's a simple product called polymer spray, specifically something like AT205 Reseal, that can add years to these rubber components. You want to spray this on all your exposed rubber parts, the power steering boot, strut tops, torsion bar covers, and any visible bushings. I do this twice a year on my own vehicles, and I've seen bushings that should have cracked after 5 years still going strong at 15. The reason this works is basic chemistry. Rubber naturally loses its flexibility over time, especially when exposed to temperature extremes and road salt. The polymer spray penetrates the rubber and restores that flexibility, preventing the cracks that lead to leaks and failures. For about $10 and 15 minutes of your time twice a year, you're potentially avoiding thousands in repairs. That's a return on investment that beats any stock market. Secret number 9. Stop destroying your springs on rough roads. This next one might shock you because it completely changed how I think about driving. Rough roads don't just make your ride uncomfortable, they're literally cutting your suspension lifespan by up to 90%. Here's the math that'll blow your mind. A coil spring that would normally last 26 years on smooth roads can fail in just 2 years if you're constantly hitting potholes and rough pavement. I learned this the hard way, when a customer came in with all 4 springs broken on a car that was only 3 years old. The repair estimate? $1,400 just for the springs. Add in the lower control arms that got damaged when the springs failed, and we're talking $3,600 every few years if you don't change your driving habits. Here's what most people don't realize. Every single pothole hit creates microscopic stress fractures in your springs and shocks. These fractures compound over time until you get that catastrophic failure that leaves you stranded and facing a massive repair bill. The solution is simpler than you think. Slow down on rough roads, avoid potholes when safely possible, and resist the urge to slam on your brakes when you hit rough patches. I know it sounds basic, but I've seen this simple driving adjustment extend suspension life from 3 years to over 15 years on the same roads. That's the difference between spending $3,600 every 3 years versus maybe $1,200 once over the entire life of your car. The math speaks for itself. Secret number 8. Your trunk is slowly destroying your suspension. Here's a mistake that 90% of drivers make without even thinking about it. They're using their trunk as a storage unit, and it's costing them thousands in premature suspension wear. Every extra pound in your car creates constant downward pressure on your springs and shocks, reducing their travel and wearing them out faster. I had a customer who couldn't figure out why her rear shocks kept failing every 2 years. When we finally looked in her trunk, she had a full-size spare, jumper cables, a toolbox, emergency supplies, winter gear, and about 150 pounds of stuff she'd been carrying around for months. Her rear suspension was essentially doing CrossFit 24/7, and it was exhausted. The fix is embarrassingly simple, but incredibly effective. Keep only the essentials in your trunk. A basic emergency kit, maybe a lightweight spare if your car came with one, and emergency supplies that actually fit your climate. Everything else needs to come out. I've seen this simple change extend shock life from 50,000 miles to over 100. But here's the bonus. Most people don't expect your car will handle better, accelerate faster, and get better gas mileage. You're literally getting paid to remove that junk through improved fuel economy. One customer calculated he saved $300 a year in gas just by cleaning out his trunk and keeping it that way. So you're preventing thousands in suspension repairs while getting paid to do it through better efficiency. The rule I tell all my customers is this: if you haven't used it in the last month, and it's not a true emergency item, it doesn't belong in your car. Your suspension will thank you, and so will your wallet. Secret number 7. Never delay your wheel alignment. Here's why it's costing you thousands. This next secret hits close to home because I see this mistake destroy cars every single day. Due to alignment scams at quick lube places, about 35% of drivers now delay getting their alignment checked, sometimes for months. Here's what that delay is really costing you, and it's way more than you think. Even a tiny 2mm misalignment starts a chain reaction that destroys your tires, ball joints, and entire suspension geometry. I've seen customers come in with $800 worth of tire damage and $2,400 in suspension repairs, all because they put off a $150 alignment for 6 months. The math is brutal, but it's reality. Here's the insider secret most people miss. You don't need to pay for alignments blindly. Most reputable tire shops will check your alignment for free during tire rotations or oil changes. Take advantage of these free checks, and if they say you need even a small adjustment, don't delay it. I've watched a 2mm toe adjustment prevent $3,200 in repairs over the next 40,000 miles. The reason alignment is so critical goes back to basic physics. When your wheels aren't pointing exactly where they should, every rotation creates uneven forces that get transmitted through your entire suspension system. Your tires start wearing unevenly, which creates vibrations that destroy ball joints and bushings. Those failing parts then create more misalignment, and you're in a downward spiral that ends with a massive repair bill. Here's my pro tip. Keep a small notebook in your glove box, and write down the date every time you get your alignment checked. If it's been more than a year or 15,000 miles since your last check, schedule one immediately. That simple habit has saved my customers thousands, and it'll do the same for you. Secret number 6. Keep your strut mounts from becoming a $1,300 nightmare. Speaking of parts that get ignored until they cause expensive failures, let's talk about strut mounts. These little components sit at the top of your struts, and when they fail, you're looking at $800 to $1,300 per axle to fix them properly. The crazy part, most of these failures are completely preventable with maintenance that costs less than a pizza. Here's what happens when strut mounts fail. You'll start hearing clunking noises over bumps, especially in cold weather. Your steering will feel loose and imprecise, and eventually the mount will fail completely, which can damage your strut and require a full assembly replacement. I've seen this turn a $200 problem into a $1,300 disaster in just a few thousand miles. The prevention is surprisingly simple, but almost nobody does it. First, treat your strut mounts with the same rubber conditioner I mentioned earlier, that AT205 or similar polymer spray. Apply it every 6 months to keep the rubber flexible. Second, and this is crucial, never let a mechanic over-tighten the strut mount nuts. They should be torqued to manufacturer's specifications, not cranked down until they strip. But here's the driving tip that most mechanics won't tell you. Drive extra carefully over potholes in cold weather. When it's below 40 degrees, your strut mounts are at their stiffest and most likely to crack from impact. I've seen more strut mounts fail on the first cold day of winter than during the entire summer. The investment is minimal, maybe $15 in rubber treatment, and being conscious of how you drive in cold weather. The payoff is avoiding that $1,300 repair bill and keeping your car handling properly for years longer than most people manage. Secret number 5. Retorque your suspension bolts before they ruin everything. Here's a maintenance step that's not in any owner's manual, but it should be. Your suspension bolts gradually loosen from constant vibration, especially if you drive on rough roads or do any off-roading. When these bolts get loose, they destroy ball joints, bushings, and can even cause alignment problems that cascade into thousands of dollars in repairs. I learned this lesson when a customer's ball joint completely separated on the highway because the bolts had worked themselves loose over 30,000 miles. We're talking about a potential accident that could have been prevented with a $100 maintenance procedure. The ball joint replacement alone was $800 plus towing plus the alignment that was now completely destroyed. The solution is something most independent mechanics know but rarely advertise. Have all your suspension bolts retorqued every time you rotate your tires, which should be every 5,000 to 8,000 miles. This takes a good mechanic about 20 minutes and shouldn't cost more than $100, but it prevents thousands in repairs and could literally save your life. Here's why this works. Suspension bolts are designed to maintain specific torque values to keep everything properly aligned and secure. Road vibrations gradually loosen these bolts, creating play in the system. That play allows parts to move in ways they weren't designed for, which accelerates wear and can lead to catastrophic failures. The signs that your bolts might be loose include clunking noises over bumps, steering that feels less precise, or uneven tire wear that develops quickly after an alignment. If you notice any of these, don't wait for your next tire rotation. Get those bolts checked immediately. Most drivers never think about this until something fails, but the smart ones who stay on top of it often get 200,000 miles or more from their original suspension components. That's the difference between spending $100 every 8,000 miles versus $3,000 every 80,000 miles. Secret number 4. Your tires are either protecting or destroying your suspension. This might be the most important tip I can give you, because your tires are either your suspension's best friend or its worst enemy. Here's the shocking truth. Improper tire pressure alone increases impact forces on your suspension by 35%, which can cut your suspension lifespan by up to that's turning a 50,000-mile suspension into a 100,000-mile suspension just from running the wrong air pressure. I see this mistake every single day. Customers come in with prematurely worn shocks and springs, and the first thing I check is their tire pressure. 9 times out of 10, they're running 5 to 10 psi below the recommended pressure, which means every bump and pothole hits their suspension 35% harder than it should. Here's what you need to do, and it's simpler than you think. Always run your tires at the exact psi recommended by your vehicle manufacturer, not the tire manufacturer. That number is printed on a sticker inside your driver's door frame. Check it monthly, not just when the low-pressure light comes on, because that light typically doesn't trigger until you're 25% low, which means you've already been damaging your suspension. But tire pressure is just the beginning. Rotate your tires every 8,000 miles and keep your wheels aligned. Uneven tire wear creates vibrations that travel directly through your suspension, accelerating wear on shocks, struts, and bushings. I've seen customers extend their suspension life by 50% just by maintaining proper tire care. Here's the money breakdown that'll motivate you to stay on top of this. A good set of tires costs $400 to $1,000, depending on your vehicle. Proper maintenance can make them last 80,000 miles instead of 50,000 miles. But more importantly, it protects suspension components that cost $2,000 to $4,000 to replace. So you're saving money on tires and avoiding thousands in suspension work, all for the cost of checking air pressure once a month. The rule I live by is this. Your tires are the only thing between your suspension and the road. Treat them right, and they'll protect everything above them. Neglect them, and they'll help destroy your entire suspension system. Secret number 3. Salt and road chemicals are silently stealing thousands from you. Here's a hidden killer that most drivers never think about until it's too late. Salt and road chemicals are eating your suspension alive, and the damage is happening right now. Even if you can't see it, I've watched customers get hit with $5,000 repair bills for suspension components that were destroyed by corrosion, not normal wear and tear. The problem is especially brutal if you live in snowy areas or near the coast. Road salt and ocean spray create an electrochemical reaction that turns your suspension metal into rust faster than you'd believe possible. I've seen control arms, springs, and shock mounts that looked like Swiss cheese after just 3 winters of neglect. And here's the kicker. Insurance doesn't cover corrosion damage, so you're paying every penny out of pocket. But here's the secret that can save you thousands. A simple weekly undercarriage rinse during salt season can prevent 90% of this damage. You don't need anything fancy. A garden hose with decent pressure will do the job. Focus on the wheel wells, suspension components, and anywhere you can see salt buildup. If you don't have access to a hose, most car washes have underbody jets that'll do the same job for about $3. The chemistry here is straightforward. Salt accelerates oxidation by acting as a catalyst, basically turbocharging the rust process. But if you wash it off before it has time to work, you break that chemical reaction. I've seen cars from Minnesota with 200,000 miles that still have pristine suspension components, because the owners religiously rinsed off the salt. Here's my pro tip. If you live in a salt area, keep a spray bottle with clean water in your garage. After driving on salted roads, give your wheel wells a quick spray down right when you get home. It takes 2 minutes and costs practically nothing, but it can literally save you thousands over your car's lifetime. The math is brutal but simple. A $20 car wash with undercarriage cleaning can prevent $5,000 in corrosion repairs. That's a 20-50 to 1 return on investment, and you can't beat those numbers anywhere. Secret number 2. Cheap parts will cost you double. Here's what actually works. This next secret is going to save you from one of the most expensive mistakes I see customers make over and over again. When suspension parts fail, The temptation is to buy the cheapest replacement parts you can find online. Here's why that's costing you double, and what you should do instead. I had a customer who needed control arms replaced. The OEM parts were $400, but he found aftermarket ones online for $180. 6 months later, he was back with the same problem. Those cheap parts had failed, and now he needed the labor done twice. Instead of spending $800 once, he ended up spending $1,200 for parts and $800 in labor charges. That $220 savings cost him $400 extra, plus 2 trips to the shop and the hassle of being without his car twice. Here's what most people don't understand about suspension parts. They're engineered specifically for your exact vehicle's weight, handling characteristics, and suspension geometry. When manufacturers cut corners on aftermarket parts, they're usually changing metallurgy, rubber compounds, or precision tolerances. These parts might bolt on and work initially, but they fail much sooner than OEM parts. The smart approach is this: always replace suspension parts in pairs. Use OEM or premium aftermarket brands, and address problems immediately when you notice them. Don't wait until that clunking noise becomes a complete failure. I've seen customers save thousands by catching problems early and fixing them right the first time. But here's the deeper secret: most mechanics won't tell you. Cheap suspension parts can actually damage other components when they fail. When that bargain control arm bushing fails, it can destroy your ball joint, throw off your alignment, and even damage your tire. So you're not just paying to replace the cheap part twice, you're paying to fix everything else it damaged when it failed. My rule for customers is simple: if it's a safety-critical suspension component, spend the extra money for OEM or premium parts. The difference might be $200 to $300 up front, but it prevents endless replacements and keeps you safe. Your suspension isn't the place to bargain hunt. It's literally what keeps your car connected to the road. Secret number 1: power steering fluid. The hidden key to suspension longevity. Here's the number 1 secret that even most mechanics overlook, and it's probably costing you more money than any other single maintenance mistake. Your power steering fluid doesn't just affect your steering, it's directly connected to suspension components like tie rods, bushings, and control arms. When this fluid goes bad, it creates a cascade of failures that can cost thousands. I discovered this connection when a customer came in with what seemed like multiple unrelated suspension problems. Her tie rod ends were shot, her control arm bushings were destroyed, and her steering rack was leaking. The common thread: her power steering fluid hadn't been changed in 8 years, and looked like black sludge. That neglect caused $3,400 in repairs that could have been prevented with $80 worth of maintenance. Here's what happens when power steering fluid breaks down. It loses its ability to lubricate and protect seals, which increases friction throughout the steering system. That extra friction gets transmitted to suspension components, accelerating their wear. Meanwhile, the degraded fluid starts eating away at rubber seals and gaskets, causing leaks that lead to even more expensive repairs. The solution is embarrassingly simple but incredibly effective. Check your power steering fluid every month. It should be clear or slightly amber, never black or foamy. Change it according to your manual's recommendation, which is typically every 3 years or 50,000 miles. If you drive on dirt roads frequently, do it even more often, because contamination accelerates fluid breakdown. Here's my pro tip that most people never think about. When you check your power steering fluid, also listen to how your power steering pump sounds. If it's whining or groaning, especially when turning, that's your early warning system. Address it immediately before it damages expensive steering and suspension components. The investment is minimal, maybe $30 for fluid and 15 minutes of your time every 3 years. But I've seen this simple maintenance prevent $4,000 in steering and suspension repairs. One customer calculated that staying on top of power steering maintenance saved her $2,800 over 150,000 miles, just by preventing the cascade of failures that dirty fluid causes. This is the kind of preventive maintenance that separates cars that need constant repairs from cars that run reliably for 200,000 miles. It's not glamorous, but it works. There you have it. 10 suspension secrets that can easily save you $5,000 or more, and potentially double your vehicle's lifespan. If you apply even half of these tips starting today, you'll be ahead of 90% of drivers who learn about suspension maintenance the expensive way. Let me ask you this. What's the most expensive car repair you've ever faced? Was it something that could have been prevented with simple maintenance? And more importantly, Which of these 10 secrets surprised you the most? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. If this video helped you avoid even one expensive repair, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I've got more insider secrets coming that could save you even more money on maintenance, repairs, and car ownership costs. Your wallet will thank you, and so will I. Thanks for watching, and remember, the best repair is the one you never have to make. Quick disclaimer: these tips are based on general automotive principles and my professional experience. Always consult your vehicle's manual and consider your skill level before attempting any maintenance. If you're not comfortable with any procedure, or if you discover significant problems, have a qualified mechanic take a look. Safety first, both yours and your vehicle's.